We are recording the interview of Llyod McNamee. This interview is conducted by David Barry from the Wright State Veteran Voices Project. This interview is being recorded at Llyod McNamee's home in West Mansfield, Ohio. It is 1 p.m. on March 14th, 2017. Well, let's start with where and when were you born?
I was born in West Mansfield, Ohio in 1923, of September of 1923.
And then,
September 3rd.
Yeah. And then, who were your parents and what did they do?
My dad and mother were farmers, and they lived here, and we had a 300-acre farm, and my brother and me were 3 years old when he moved to this farm, and he still lived there when my brother and me went to the Army, my twin brother.
What did you farm?
What did we farm? Oh, and just a normal farm at that time, cattle, hogs, sheep, and grain farmer. It was 4 miles from here.
And then you said you had a brother?
Yeah, I had a twin brother. Yeah. And he went to Europe, and he was a truck driver in Europe. He got leukemia and died when he was 45 years old.
I'm sorry to hear that. So you said that he was a truck driver in Europe. Does that mean he was in the service?
In the Air Force.
Oh.
He was in the Air Force too, just like I was.
How did that make your parents feel, you both joining at the same time?
Well, it was a hard job. I mean, I suppose he had about 12, 13 cows and 100 head of sheep, and was farming 300 acres, and my brother and me both went the same day. Yeah, it made a difference to them, and it was hard.
So did they have to hire outside help on the farm?
Well, then a lot of young people or strong people were in the service, and they always hired somebody to help them, young kids in the farming. And then while my brother and me were in the Army, they moved out here in the country, a couple miles right out here, where my grandparents had lived.
And was it just you and your brother and your family that served?
Yeah. Yes.
Then outside of helping your dad on the farm, what were you doing before your military service?
Well, I worked at a place called Harding Machine Screw Company for a year after I graduated, and then I went to the Army. When my brother and me were 19, we went to the Army. Air Force.
And then, did you enlist or were you drafted?
We enlisted.
Or what made you want to enlist?
Just before you got drafted, I guess. Not that I'm so brave, but, you know, we knew he was going to be drafted, so we enlisted.
Did Pearl Harbor or did any events kind of help you decide to join the service outside of just the draft?
No. I remember when Roosevelt declared war, and I remember his speech. And he gave a great speech. And one thing I remember is he said, "The hand that held the dagger struck its neighbor in the back." That was one of the things he said. And I never thought at the time that I'd even have to go. I thought it'd be over. But that was in a year. My brother and me both went. But I think it'd be good for the country to have a year's training for people.
How did you feel about the military and the war before you joined?
No, I figured you was just like, you're just like cannon fodder. You'd go out there and shoot you. Somebody shoot you. But like I said in that interview, when you go to the Army, they teach you how to get along, and it's an education. And finally, at the time when they're ready to go overseas, you're ready to go. You want to go and get the job done. So that's the way I felt. I mean, I wasn't worried about going overseas.
What do you think prepared you the best for going overseas?
The training you had. And growing up.
Why did you choose the Army Air Corps?
Well, I thought if you were in heavy bombardment, that you'd be based a long ways from the front. And I thought that was the place to be. You weren't going to get in any skirmishes, and chances are they're not going to have big bombers close to the front where they could be bombed on the ground. And that's the way I felt about it. So maybe you say that I wasn't very brave, but that's the way I looked at it at the time. But I got into more action than I ever thought I would.
It's funny how it works out that way.
Yeah.
So, when you and your brother left for basic training, can you kind of tell me how that day went?
Well, there was 4 of us from this town who went the same day. And one of them's named Bob Sean and Jim Cook and my brother and me. And, it was a new experience. And we got on the train here at West Mansfield and went down to Columbus and to the induction, or get a physical. And we were there all day, and they put you on a train going to Indianapolis to that induction center, or to that, whatever, to get you your clothes and things done. So that's what we did. And then I went to Miami Beach for basic training, and then to Amarillo, and then to the Seattle, Washington, then to Denver, and then to Kansas.
Wow. A long list of, were those training bases that you're going to?
Yeah, there was, well, you went to airplane mechanic school, that was Amarillo, Texas, and you learned, airplanes. You learned about them, the engines and all, and then we went to Seattle to B-29 school, and then to Denver to go to armament school, and then to Kansas for flight training.
And then, do you recall any of your instructors at any of those
No.
schools that stuck out?
No.
Any of those schools stick out to you as preparing you the best for overseas, or were they all essential?
All pretty important. You had to go learn something about armament and flying, and I'd never been up in my life until I was in Kansas.
Oh, was that so? The first airplane you were ever in was a military aircraft?
Right. Never been up before.
Were you nervous about that at all, or?
Well, it's a new experience, and something you have to do, and you become accustomed to, and get a little confidence in doing what you're doing, and you just grow up, and you become more adapted to where you're going to go.
Do you remember any specific training or anything that really helped you to adapt?
No, they're all about the same. It's a learning process.
So you said that you went to mechanic school and flight school. What are those? Learning those schools, how did those apply to what you were doing?
Well, you had to learn the basics of aircraft engines and learn about the aircraft, how, learn about the engines, the fuselage, the brakes, the controls, bomb, where you put the bombs, and you just learn what has to be done.
How long did that take you to
Well, we
learn
went
all
to Amarillo to airplane mechanic school for 6 months. And then we went to Seattle for 2 months. Then we went to Denver for a month or two. And then we went to Kansas. And we stayed home for a while to check out new crews coming into, you know, the new crews after the old crews left. And then when we got that done, well, we took off and went overseas. We went to Puerto Rico and changed the engine. Then we went to Gold Coast of Africa at Accra, and we went to Khartoum, Egypt, and then to Karachi, India, and then due to Calcutta, or 80 miles out of Calcutta. That's where we were. It was always interesting to see the people that lived there and their customs and stuff. But I always knew that after looking at the Chinese, that the world would hear from them someday, because we hear from them today,
So, leaving home for the first time, joining the military, going to all these different countries, going to all these different schools, how did you adjust to that?
No problem. I mean, you just went wherever they sent you. You did what they told you to do, and it's just something you have to do.
Did working on the farm help with the physical aspect of the military?
I would say so, yeah. You learn some mechanical stuff, and you learn to work pretty hard on the farm, and
Food probably wasn't as good than what was on the farm.
Mm-hmm.
So the food in the service must not have been as good as what you had on the farm?
Oh, I don't know. I can't complain. I didn't think it was that bad. That is.
We'll take a short break. We are This is David Barry with the Veteran Voices program. We are returning with Llyod McNamee. So we were talking about your experiences on the farm,
Mm-hmm.
and you felt that was pretty good.
Yeah. My dad was a disciplinarian. You did what he said,
So I helped you
without
follow
question.
orders. That's probably a good reference for the military.
Mm-hmm.
Did your dad, was he in the military at all?
No.
Then you kind of listed a long list of different countries you've been to. So you were mainly fighting in the Pacific during World War II? Or?
No, we went to India
India.
first, and 80 miles from Calcutta, and we flew out of there for, I don't know, we was there for quite a while because we couldn't fly a lot of missions quick because of maintenance on the aircraft. And they were not in good shape when we took them over there because too many bad things happened to them. And then as you went along, the planes become more dependable, and they tested them in combat, and that is not too good to do. Should you have more time, but it wasn't a war, and you didn't have time for all that.
So you were one of the first people to kind of...
I was in the 9th class that went through B-29 school in Washington, in Denver, Seattle. That's a Boeing aircraft is up there.
Did you like the fact that you were with the B-29, or would you rather have been on a different, maybe more experienced aircraft?
No, I liked the B-29. Well, the B-29 was a pressurized aircraft, and it was a lot more comfortable to fly in than a B-17 or any of the others they had, because they were not pressurized, and they was cold and were not very nice to fly in because you'd freeze your butt off,
So what were some of your duties on the B-29?
Well, I was a tail gunner, and at the beginning of the war, our airplanes didn't have any guns in the tail. There was no defense back there, And the Japs used to come in on the tail all the time and just shoot you down because you couldn't shoot them because there weren't any guns back there. But and then they always attacked the tail then, but after they put guns in the tail, you could shoot the Japs down rather than they get you, because they had to come up behind you and they were out there like a duck, you know, because you were flying one direction, they were behind you, and they were it was easy to hit them. But when we put guns in the tail, they quit attacking the tail. They attacked from the front on a pursuit curve. They'd come in on higher at 1 to 2 o'clock and come in and they'd come in at you, and then they would pass you real quick. And there, that fighter was flying 250 miles an hour and we were going 230. Look at the rate of closure there. And but that's where they attacked from. Oh, I did see them come in at 3 o'clock and different times, but usually it was a high in front that they come into you. And that plane had 450 caliber guns on top in the front turret, and they had 2 on the bottom, and had 2 guns. It used to have a 20 millimeter cannon in the tail, but they took it out because it shot too slow and not very far. So we just had 250s there then, and then the rear lower turret, it had 250s in it.
So did you have a gunner at each of those stations?
You had an automatic. You had a remote control system. Oh. You had a sight base, and it was calibrated. The guns were calibrated to go where you turned the sight base. And that's what we didn't have our hands on the guns. They were all remote control.
So were you controlling all the guns on the aircraft?
The top gunner he was on top, and he could see up above. The navigator controlled, the bombardier controlled the front guns. The tail gunner just had tail guns. He didn't have any switching controls or anything from one place to another. And the tail did, because you were back there by yourself. And it was a new system, but we learned to use it.
So you said you were stationed in India. How was your time there?
Oh, my time, we were there, I suppose, about 10 months. And then we went to the Tinian from there. But we'd fly the hump into China, and then fly missions, and come back and fly the hump back into India.
How long would one of those missions run you?
One of those sheets I gave you took a picture of. It tells you how long. However, they stretch that time a little bit. Most of them were around 12 hours.
Oh. So were you back in India pretty much or when you came back from China after the mission? Did you just stay there? Or?
Yeah, that was our base. But we just flew the hump into Shintou in China.
So what was the normal routine of some of those over-the-hump missions?
Normal. We were always loaded heavy when we went over, because you take some gas and you needed gas in China so you could fly missions out of there. And then you'd take your bombs and all the people you needed. So that was it. I mean, ATC flew a lot of it over. But
would you guys come back empty most of the time, or?
Yeah, we'd have to come back empty. After you fly missions, you'd have to come back, put some gas on to get back over the hump.
Would you do that in air, or?
No, we did it on the ground.
In China?
Yeah. We had to put gas on after the mission to fly, get back over the hump, or we'd run out of fuel. Fuel was always a problem. You have bad things happen, why you'd have a hard time getting home.
So do you have any other memories of your experience overseas that you'd like to share?
Well, I just enjoyed the people I was there with. I think they were good, strong people. And I think, you know, I have fond memories of those people. And I think they made me a better person.
How so?
Learning, being in combat, and your life wasn't worth much at that time. Because, hell, half of them got killed. You hated to lose your friends.
Is there anyone you served with that kind of sticks out in your mind that is a good story?
Well, my best friend was was a guy by the name of Lonnie Bogus. He lived in Maywood, Illinois. He died 20 years ago. We were going to an Air Force reunion. I guess it was Oshkosh, and we stopped to see him in Chicago, and he only lived a couple weeks after that. But I liked him. He was a nice guy. And, you know, you'd like most of the people in your crew and the people that you played cards with and stuff like that.
Is there anything you can remember, like how you guys came to that kind of the crew cohesion or the crew camaraderie?
Well, you lived with them and you flew with them, and it's a team. And, you know, it's a team, and each one of them's got to do their job. And if you have somebody that's not efficient or like I told you about Heffernan, he got the Distinguished Service Cross, and then he got nervous and couldn't fly anymore, and they busted him to a private and sent him back to States. And he even thought they would bust him for inefficiency. No, for shirking hazardous duty. But he wanted to do it, but he couldn't. So they broke him to a private and sent him back to States. It's kind of harsh. But he got killed. He flew a little airplane in Lawrence, Kansas. And he was landing one time, hit a light line and killed himself.
Other than your trips from India to China, did you serve anywhere else overseas?
No, that was it. Tinian and the Marianas, you know. The Marianas finally was a place they all flew out of. And they had a lot of planes out there.
And then how was it staying in touch with family and friends back home while you were overseas?
Oh, you'd write letters home, and, you know. Being in Amarillo, it wasn't a very good place to be because it got cold and it was windy all the time. Wasn't the best place. Seattle was great. Denver was all right.
How was the weather overseas?
Well, the weather in India was hot, really hot. And then the monsoon season, a lot of rain. In China it was more cool and different. It was a good place to be for climate.
Did the monsoon season stop your combat missions at all?
No. When it was time to go, you went. They put your name on the board and that's where you went. That's where you had discipline. That's where this country is weak and sick. Nobody has any discipline.
Can't argue with you there.
Huh?
Said I can't argue with you there. Yeah. So, what were some of the things you would do for recreation when you weren't going on combat missions?
Well, you didn't get away a lot, but I mean, we went to Calcutta and we would eat real good, you know. We were flying combat and we got regular pay and then air, or, you know, combat pay. We had, I think I made $172 a month. That wasn't too bad.
Huh? And then, is there kind of anything else on your combat experience that you'd like to talk about? Any other stories?
Well, I remember going into Osaka, Japan one day, and we were flying, I think, at about 15,000 feet, and we heading for that target. There was a column of smoke coming up from that target, right over the target. And if you fly into that smoke, there's a thermal, and the air is lighter than it was just out where you were flying, you know, normally. And it would drop your airplane. I mean, you could lose control. But we went up there and to that smoke, and then we went around it, coming back to the coast. A plane got hit out there, and we could sit up there and watch it all. And they were on fire. And they were flying to the coast, hoping to make the coast so that they could bail out. Because we had a submarine out there that would pick people up. And and finally a wing broke off of that airplane, and they bailed out. A lot of them bailed out. Two of them landed on the coast, and a submarine was out there, and they waded out in the water, and they got on that submarine and came back. Kind of exciting to see, you know. Came back, one thing that I hated the Japanese when I first got back here. But the Honda come in here and they started hiring our people, you know. A lot of people lived here that work at Honda. And, well, they furnished employment for our people. Finally, it ended up being real good for us because they employed the people. And I had two son-in-laws that retired from Honda. And, you know, it was good. And my son-in-law, his boss, Japanese, and he invited him in to eat. I forget what it was, on Christmas or Thanksgiving. And he and another guy came, but he was Joe Hughes' boss. And he came and ate dinner. Later I asked Joe to talk to him. I was in the Lions Club, and we had to get a speaker every once in a while. It was our turn. So Joe asked him if he'd come over and speak. My throat's kind of... And he did. He brought his wife over, and he gave a speech at the Lions Club. I still got it here someplace. They're just like we are. They're interested in their family and their children, and they want to live just like we do. We have the same desire, you know. But anyway, after that meeting, we invited him to come down, and I was showing him those missions I was on, and one of them was where they lived. And he said, they said that their mother took them out into rice paddies when the bombers come over, when the B-29s come over. But when they saw that name, they were, but that is what they said.
How did that make you feel to be able to talk to someone?
Well, it makes you feel good. You like the people. They were good, God-fearing people, just like we are. And God knows, glad we aren't fighting them. They were wicked little bastards, though. And we were too. But, you know, it doesn't do you any good to hate, because you're going to be the loser. But, you know, Joe and him got along well. They invited him out to dinner. That was, you know, the way it is. Thing to do.
Then, were you ever wounded while you were overseas?
No. See, I had a service station over on Route 33. I was here for a while, and then I bought one over there. And and that was before the TRC came in there, Transportation Research Center. And they took my station by eminent domain of 5,000 acres that the TRC took at the time. And they come over and they bought 5,000 acres for around $300 an acre. But I was inside that area where they wanted, and they took my station. And I went to court and fought as long as I could. The part that you don't like is that it was our livelihood. I had a family. And they take your property, and then they go around and find out what other kind of prices that kind of business would bring. And they don't treat you very good. You don't get along too well. They don't pay you enough. So I quit there, or I came back here and run this station then, because a guy that was running it, he broke up. And I come back and run it until I retired.
So where were you when the war ended?
I was home on furlough. I had finished my missions, 35 missions.
Wow.
And we left there, and then we flew to Hawaii, Hickam Field, and then we come by boat on to San Francisco.
How did that make you feel when?
Glad to get home. I didn't want to stay in the service, and when I got discharged, I took took a lot of my Army clothes off. I didn't want to have to salute people anymore.
And then, how were you received by your family and community when you came home?
People were always good to me. Had a hard time making a living for a while.
Why was that?
Agriculture wasn't a very good place to be at that time. Prices were not good, and it was hard to make a living. Hard to make money. But then I got a service station, and I made more money there, and I made quite a bit of money after, well, I don't know how much is much, but I made some money anyway, enough for me. And I had 4 daughters, you know.
How was it readjusting to civilian life?
I had no problems.
Have you remained in contact with anyone that you served with?
Yeah. Went to all those reunions and got to know people and liked them. But they're all about all of them are gone, you know.
How was it being able to go to those reunions?
Well, it was nice because you knew these people. And you'd go to a reunion and be like old home week, kind of, you know. Good people.
That's good. And are you a member of any veteran organizations?
I belong to the American Legion. I have. I've been commander of the American Legion 4 or 5 times because it's just a small legion, and some of the guys have to take turns being officers in the Legion. So, yeah, I did that a lot. I was in Masonic Lodge and the Lions Club, and was on the school board one time here in Ben Logan. and that was just before the school was built. And I did a lot of things. I tried to help the community and be a good citizen.
Or what were some of the things you did for the community?
Well, I served on those at the Lions Club, and that's a community thing. And if you were on the school board, it's pretty important that the school is there, and you you try to develop policies that will help the school. And I think we did help that at the time.
And then, how has your military experience affected your life?
I'm proud of what I did. I feel I can stand up and look anybody in the face and say, I've been there, done that. I don't back away. I think I have had the constant confidence in myself.
What are some life lessons that you learned from the military?
Discipline. In war, what do you think is the most expendable thing in war?
I would hope to say ammunition.
Hmm?
Said I would hope ammunition, but more often than not, it's the lives of the people to your right and to your left.
People. There's a big supply of people. That's what the people got to learn now, that they're expendable. We can live without them. And all these goddamn dope dealers and stuff that's running our society, kill them. Now that isn't being mean. If they tell a soldier that he's expendable, and that if you go out there and you get killed, somebody there will take your place. That is kind of the ultimate sacrifice. And the dope dealers don't deserve to ruin society. There should be harsh penalties.
I agree. And then, how has your military service impacted your feelings about war and the military in general?
I know it's got to be. It's a thing that's going to be here, and you aren't ever going to live without it.
Well, I only have a couple more questions left for you. Is there anything you feel like we haven't discussed or should be added to this interview?
I think we've pretty well covered the field.
And then my last question is, what message would you like to leave for future generations who will view this interview?
To be disciplined, live with the rules of the society, be good, upstanding citizens that feel for your neighbor, and not to be weak. Guess that's it.
Oh, good thing. Well, this concludes our interview, and I'd like to say thank you for taking the time to do this interview, and
Glad
thank
to
you
do
for
it.
your service.
Glad to do it. I just hope it